Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be doing some white heat embossing, some watercoloring. We are going to be using the Paradise Plumeria set and the Anchor of Hope set. These came out at the same time. They are two different sets, but they do work well together. And I'm working on watercolor paper, so I am going to stamp the anchor on a separate piece, and then I'm going to build a background with the Paradise Plumerias. So I treat it? I should have treated it with my anti-static tool. I'm not sure if I did and I cut it out of the video or I completely forgot it, to be quite honest. But I also do like to stamp these twice, especially working on watercolor paper because it has a rougher texture, so it can be more difficult to get a smooth stamped image. So I stamped that with our Brilliant White pigment ink, and then I sprinkled on some white detail embossing powder, and then I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. I do like to preheat my heat gun before I take it to my paper. That just minimizes warping and honestly makes the process go faster. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to start working on building my background. So because there are so many stamps in this set, the building of the background goes really, really quick because I'm able to basically complete one whole side at a time. But I'm not worried about filling in the middle. If you guys have watched videos previously where I talk about building pattern paper, or even last week's live, we did do some stamping in the background to kind of make sure everything was covered. For this, I'm not worried about making sure that center is full because I already know I'm going to be putting that anchor in the center, so it's fine. So anyway, treat with your anti-static tool, and then I'm going to ink these all up at one time. And again, I am going to stamp them twice. It always makes for a more dynamic background if you stamp off the edge so that it looks like, that pattern just continues on out past your card. And in here, like with this one, I'm kind of almost creating, I guess, a little bit like a frame. Where, if you wanted to do a larger sentiment, you could just stamp a larger sentiment inside the frame and not do the piece on top. I actually made this card quite some time ago, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's not my favorite card that I've ever made. And I think that cards like this are important to share because, especially for somebody who does this as like, this is how I make my living. I think as card makers, we sometimes feel, or art, crafters, artists in general, we sometimes feel like we're looking at everybody else's projects and, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. And every card they make is, an absolute knockout. And maybe I make a card that I really love, like, once a week, and the other the other 3 cards I make that week, I'm just like, well, that's okay. It didn't come out like I wanted it to. But even when you do this for a living, you still have cards that didn't necessarily come out how you envisioned them. Now, to be clear, I don't think that this card is, just something to know. Before I move on with the next round of stamping, I am taking the time to clean off my stamps because that pigment ink is meant to stay wet longer so that you can emboss with it. Plus, it gives much better coverage. But I leave that ink on there and then I put them on my card and I'm kind of rearranging them, I'm definitely going to transfer that ink. And then when I go to heat set it, it's going to be a big old mess. So... total sidetrack moment. Like, I laughed to myself. What movie was that? Was it Clueless? Where she was like, it's when she's like, she's a Mona Lisa. Like, it looks really good from far away. And then when you get up close to it, you're like, oh, it's just a big old mess. Sorry. Anyway, so you want to make sure that you're taking the time to clean your stamps and make sure that they're dry, like you've rubbed off any of the extra moisture. And then here, like, once you get the majority of it stamped, it does get a little bit trickier to kind of get all of the corners to make sure that there's flowers on all of the areas that you want it to be. So just, take your time and go through, and add them in where you feel like you need them. So for my medium today, I am going to be doing watercoloring, but I'm going to be doing watercoloring with distress inks. I have regular watercolors. I have a lot of different watercolors. I have Daniel Smith's. I have Altenew watercolors. I have the Karen Brush Pro markers. I have Zig Clean Color markers. I have a lot of options. But I like watercoloring with distress inks because I feel like it's something that a lot of people have, and also because I'm naturally just cheap. I feel like it allows me to kind of stretch those products out and get kind of more bang for my buck. So I chose a softer palette this time around, and actually at the time that I was making it, I think it was probably like springtime, so I was thinking of like, more soft kind of colors, but also it's kind of like an encouragement card, and I feel like a lot of times when we're giving like, sympathy cards or things like, where we're trying to express maybe a little bit of a softer side to things, a softer kind of way to offer encouragement, that it's good to have those kind of more comforting colors, more muted palette. And so that is what I chose. So, of course, we have blue because blue is my boyfriend. And then from there, I went with some bundled sage, a couple of the more muted pinks. And then I think for the yellow, I went with fossilized amber. But as you can see, this is definitely a messier style of watercolor. I am speeding it up. I do not watercolor this fast. But I sometimes really cherish kind of these play sessions because it doesn't require me to do a lot of thinking. It only requires me to play. And those sessions can be sometimes exactly what we need when we are in a season of life where things just kind of feel overwhelming, which at the time that I was painting this is exactly how I felt. So I really just wanted something that was going to be enjoyable without me putting a lot of stress on myself. And so I chose colors that I knew were going to work well together. Your blues and your greens are always going to work well with yellows, and then the pinks are going to work with the yellow and the blue. So I knew everything was going to work nicely. And then you can decide how much of each color you want to add. And I also left mine very messy. So I let it bleed out into the background. I added more water to it to get things kind of moving a little bit more. You could absolutely do this same thing with a really, really clean watercolor where you were only wetting the areas that were embossed and adding color there. But I let it bleed out into the background. That is the look that I was going for. And then the same thing kind of with the spatters, spattering the color on there and getting those colors mixing. If I wanted the color to spread out a little bit more, what you just saw me doing there was adding some extra water around the images and to help encourage the flow of the pigment. And then once I was done, I went ahead and heat set it with my heat gun. And then here I'm just kind of showing you up close what this is looking like. And now you could absolutely leave it like this. And I'm going to be honest with you. I wish that I would have colored the anchor, with the extra dimension, and I would have left the background. That's not what I did. But again, those lessons are super important because if you don't play, you can never learn. The most helpful lessons are typically learned in making, I don't even want to say mistakes because the card wasn't a mistake, but in figuring out what you don't like as much as what you do like. So here I'm just going in, I've picked out some colors that kind of match the color scheme that I have going on. And I am not coloring like the entirety of the flower yellow or the entirety of the flower pink. I am seeing kind of where they intersect, and I am allowing the colors to work together. So part of like that plume area right there, part of it is pink and part of it is yellow. The same thing's going to be true for this one that's kind of down into the bottom right. Part of it's going to be yellow and part of it's going to be pink. If you're more comfortable coloring it in its entirety, that's okay, do that too. Because with this color palette, the pink and the yellow play nice together so you can layer them. For the actual anchor, I am going to use these more muted blue colors. So you'll see me kind of working around trying to find the actual anchor. In the middle of that, for some reason, that I started coloring that leaf, and I was like, what are you doing? So apparently I was too lost in thought, a little too much, to pay attention to what I was doing. But don't worry, the green will cover it up, and nobody will know but us. So anyway, these kind of play sessions are super fun, but also really important for us to learn different things about our whatever, kind of art that you choose to do, whether that's, coloring or watercolor or mixed media, color pencil, what have you. So the reason that I wish that I would have chose to color the anchor but not color the background is because the anchor kind of gets lost on the background, and you'll see that. Now, if you watch my channel, you know that I'm a huge proponent of everything is fixable, and I certainly had invested quite a bit of time into this card. So I was not going to be just throwing it away. Absolutely not. So I was going to find a way to fix it, which ultimately I think that I did. And again, I don't dislike the card. It's not my most favorite one that I ever put out. And again, that's okay too. So as far as life, we had a really good weekend. We were able to spend some time with the kids in the pool, which was great. Oh my gosh, I have to tell you this story. I completely forgot about it. So we're going to do the background. We're going to do the same thing. I didn't show you because it's the same thing that we just did. So I didn't show you all of that in its entirety. But I will show you the cast shadow. Not that even you can see it in the finished card. But anyway, so I have to tell you about how my husband was my knight in shining armor. And he told me to make sure that I really let you know how much he saved my life when I tell you this story, because he did. So I had told you in a previous video, I was super excited to get Jelly Bean from daycare a little bit early, and I was going to try to get her in the pool, and I was successful. I was able to do that. And so, but I had just washed my hair. And so I was like, listen, I'm going to get in the pool, but I'm not going to get my hair wet. I put it up in a top knot, which my oldest child calls my muffin. I don't know why. He says it looks like a muffin, but I have naturally curly hair, and putting in a top knot is the easiest way to get it out of my face consistently. Here, this is me. I'm stamping the sentiment before I do the die cutting because I'm going to cut them both out. I didn't love the sentiment either, and I ended up changing the color scheme for that, but you'll see that shortly. So anyway, I was got myself ready, got her ready. We got in the pool. I told my husband hey, we're going to get in the pool. And then so when he got home, he came out, and of course Jelly Bean was like, Daddy, come swimming. So he went and changed and got in the pool. We were just kind of walking, catching up on our day. But she is still learning, her swimming and stuff. And, so when she kicks her feet, I typically try to stand back, or when she jumps in or whatever, because I'm not trying to get my hair wet. I just washed it. Back to the card. So here, can you see how busy this is? And this anchor just totally gets lost on this background because they're all the same tone, which is a problem. So I immediately am okay, I need to come up with some contrast because it's just getting lost. So I picked out a navy blue marker, which I knew, again, is going to work with my color scheme, and I went around the outside edge. Something to note here, if you color over your embossing with a alcohol marker, you will color your embossing. However, you can clean it with a 0 marker. You just go over top of it. Do not scrub. Just glide over it and then scribble off the extra on a piece of paper, and then do that until you've cleaned up all your white lines. So this is better, but I then needed to trim it down so that I would have it on a navy background, and this is looking better. I don't love the sentiment, but I'm going to go with it and see how we do. Anyway, back to the pool. So he knew like I was not trying to get my hair wet, because then I can just like hop out of the pool, rinse off or whatever, and we can go on with making dinner and the rest of our evening. So while we're standing there talking, he was like, hey, listen, I know you don't want to get your hair wet, but I'm going to get your hair wet and I need you to trust me. And I was like, what? And he was like, no, really, I promise. Like, you're going to be so grateful that I got your hair wet. And I was like, okay. And then I turn around and he is like, he's like, the spider was in your hair. You guys, there was a spider in my hair. I was horrified. It was awful. I was like, oh my gosh. So then the rest of the time that we're in the pool, like every time like I would feel something, I'd be like, it's spider. It's on me. It's spider. So he very nicely just let him go off, outside of the pool, but he was in my hair. I want to know, here's what I want to know. What freeway, what path of life did the spider take to get to my hair? That is what I want to know. How did we get from point A to point B? Because he had to get up there somehow. Guys, I don't know how he could have got up there without, he had to have been crawling. He had to have been crawling on me. He had to have been. I don't even know how else he would get up there. It's not like he kamikazed off the side of the deck or something and landed inside my hair. That didn't happen. Maybe it did happen. That would make me feel better if that happened, but I don't think that that's what happened. And it was awful. And I'm still traumatized. I don't know if you can tell. So anyway, back to the card. I stamped it just like we did the heat embossing before. This time I did it on navy. That was much better. I was much happier with the way that was looking. And then, of course, we're going to do the same things that we always do. We're going to add the shimmer. Be careful because your distress inks can reactivate with water. And then I added just some highlights with my white gel pen. I also added some shimmer with the little rhinestones to, add some little shimmer and shine there. And then that is the whole card. So I hope that this encourages you to try new things. And, when something goes wrong, don't give up. Just try to find an alternative way to make it into something that you can be happy with. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.